former President Trump's rivals in this race for the 2024 nomination, they've been quick to respond, but not always quick to criticize the former president. This is continuing a pattern that's played out through every indictment, and it played out again after the indictment in the Fulton County, Georgia election case. Multiple candidates have defended the former president throughout his legal troubles, but a couple of others have been critical, including former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson. Amanda Rooker and Musadiq Bidar join us now. As I said, they would be coming back. They are here. Amanda is the chief political reporter for KCCI, our outstanding affiliate here in Des Moines, Iowa. Musadiq is the CBS News political reporter. So for both of you, I want to play an encounter I had with Asa Hutchinson at the fair yesterday about the latest Trump indictment. Let's take a quick listen.
I think the two key cases are the classified information, the national security protection, and then the January 6th, and which are both federal cases. And generally, state cases are deferential to the federal case that was brought. And I think you can make a case that Georgia should have been deferential because there's overlap there as well. But it is what it is. And I said over a year ago, that Donald Trump should withdraw from the race because of what he is facing. And if you put our country first, then that's exactly what you would do. And that case is only made stronger with every indictment and case that is brought against him.
What do you think the probability is of him dropping out?
Well, I think it's nigh unto zero, but I would say that there's probably going to be some challenges under the 14th Amendment.
Have you read about that?
I have.
Are you persuaded by that?
I am persuaded that it is another issue that should keep him from the presidency, that could keep him from the presidency.
What do you need to do to catapult yourself?
Well, the debate is important, and secondly, it's spending every day in Iowa that I can because people need to get to know me. I'm not as known as the other candidates. My record's not as known.
People get to know Asa Hutchinson. Well, that's certainly true. Amanda and Moose, he has not developed any momentum here that I can detect. He has a record. He's an accomplished governor. He was in former President George W. Bush's cabinet, and yet kind of flatlining here in Iowa. How would you evaluate where Asa Hutchinson is, Amanda?
Well, I think that he hasn't had a moment, right? He's been here. He's been on the ground. I've watched him walk into diners, do that grassroots Iowa campaigning, but he hasn't had kind of a breakout moment at an event or with people that grabs the headlines and gets people talking. Although he is one of the only candidates to really be talking so harshly condemning Donald Trump, that even hasn't been enough to really given the momentum to jump to the top of the headlines.
And Musadiq, that is the problem.
Yeah.
And that's the political calculus every Republican is going through. What do? You attack the president, and if you do so, does it look like you're amplifying Democratic criticism? Does that land well or not? And what do you do? How do you balance these two?
It's hard for a lot of these candidates to balance that, and we've seen them try to make that tiptoe that line. You just had Bob Vanderplaats on at his event, at the Family Leader event. Former Congressman Will Hurd said that the president, Donald Trump, is running to stay out of prison, and he was booed off stage. And so it's tough for them to not just on the indictments, but on other policy issues, draw differences. Vivek Ramaswamy has been attempting this, and at his Fair Side chat, he said he wants to build on a lot of the stuff that the former president started on. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they criticize the former president, not just on the legal issues, but on policy and things that they want to build on. And a lot of them are not having success so far.
Amanda, while I have you, I want to ask you about Vivek Ramaswamy, because Bob Vanderplaats said he's probably the surprise Republican so far. What are you hearing?
He is. When I talk to Iowans, I say, if they say I'm not looking at Donald Trump, or even if they say I'm looking at Donald Trump, they say my number 2, my number 3 are either Vivek Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, or Ron DeSantis are the 3 names I consistently hear. 4
months ago, that would not have been true. Nobody would have said Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh, absolutely. He was the name that, was maybe among the bottom of the list of people. Who is that? He's not in politics.
Right.
I've never heard of him before. People may not be able to, cite where, who he is or what he's done, but they certainly like his message.
Mm-hmm. And Moose, is that consistent with what you've heard and seen?
It is, and we're hearing his name come up more and more. And like you said, sometimes people can't even pronounce his name, but they say, you know, I like that guy. He speaks a lot of truth, and he speaks very eloquently and well. And so the other thing he's doing, going to a lot of places. Every time candidates come to Iowa, he's doing 6, 7 events. He is going all over the state, and that's going to make a difference.
Another thing, he's met with people, key influential Iowans, Governor Reynolds, even to talk about how do I message well to Iowans and how do I connect with them. And the Iowans that I talked to say he's really positive. He has a clear message. He wears a hat that says truth on the top. And I know what he stands for. He stands for patriotism, and they like that. But I don't know if they like that enough to topple some of the other names that they know of.
To topple a DeSantis,
Sure.
to topple a Tim Scott,
Right.
to topple a Nikki Haley. All of this still has yet to gel.
Right.
It's still a kind of a free-floating mass of questions, pitches from politicians, and big decisions on the minds of Iowa voters. Musadiq Bidar, Amanda Rooker, thank you so very much.